Hey friend, welcome back to the Vision Driven Health Podcast, your go-to show for learning how to create healthy habits that last in partnership with the God who created you. Have you ever felt unclear about what it actually looks like to partner with God in your health? Do you wonder what's missing from your approach to healthy eating? Do you find yourself in a vicious cycle of dieting and restrictive eating? I really think that all comes back to whether or not we are living out 4 core elements of holistic biblical health. I go over each one in this episode, and I hope they serve as a solid foundation for you to build upon. Do you find yourself struggling to consistently implement healthy habits? Do you lack energy, confidence, and motivation because of stress, overwhelm, and shame for having not gotten it together by now? Friend, there is hope and grace for your health. Hey, I'm Robin Ryan McDonald, host of the Vision Driven Health Podcast. I'm a follower of Jesus, a wife, a mama of 2, and a seminarian turned health coach. And I'm so excited that you're here. I found myself in my early 20s captive to cravings and convenience, 20 pounds heavier, super tired, with a face full of acne. I could not figure out how to maintain healthy habits until I discovered the power of aligning my choices with God's vision. 10 years and 2 kids later, by the grace of God, I'm still prioritizing my health and feeling amazing. If you are over quick fixes and are ready to feel good in your own skin, then grab a giant water bottle and let's dive on in. Even though today's episode is focusing on non-food things to consume, I know people will get to the end of the episode and probably think, okay, cool, but what do I actually eat? So I created the What to Eat Masterclass to dispel any confusion on what exactly to eat in order to be well and get on the right track for healthy weight loss. You can get 15% off this class at visiondrivenhealth.com/whattoeat by using code LISTENER15. You can also use the link in the show notes. I've got a ton of amazing guests coming your way this summer who are going to give you awesome insight about nutrition, mindset, healthy habits, and so much more. Now, my husband had the spontaneous idea to do a 30-day camping adventure to the national parks this summer. And truth be told, I was immediately resistant and overwhelmed at the thought. But I also knew it would probably be super cool. We've been scrambling to get things in place for it because usually you plan something like that at least 4 to 6 months in advance. So we've been really working hard to get that all together. And a part of getting everything together was me gathering quite a few guest interviews to fill our adventure-packed summer. So today's episode is just me, no guest, but it's a focus on what I think are arguably the most important foundational elements of holistic health when you're trying to partner with God. And so I really think these will set the stage for what you'll be hearing in my conversations with these guests. Now, many guests do touch on these topics and they go further into detail, so this will honestly just be a really great on-ramp for you. Now, when it comes to creating a healthy lifestyle, particularly as it relates to nutrition, it's so important that we are consuming what we need outside of food. Which you're like, wait, what? Outside of food, then what do we consume? Well, we are in a consumeristic world. It's all about consuming entertainment, social media, the news, the latest and greatest fashions, and so many other, honestly, worldly things. Now, I'm not opposed to any of these things, nor do I abstain from them entirely, but we must order our lives according to the priorities that align with what it means to be a follower of Jesus. We are in this world, but we are not of it. That means we have a different approach to everything. And it's not because we have a different set of rules as Christians. It's far deeper than that. It's because we have a different focus, source, and reason for what we do. And his name is Jesus. So first and foremost, everything comes down to whether or not we are consuming Christ. The question becomes, are we cultivating our relationship with the living God? So this is the first core element, and that is our relationship with the Lord. The ultimate fulfillment, freedom, and peace in life is found in knowing the heart of God and receiving His love. Without this critical piece of human existence, a healthy life is literally unattainable. We need Jesus. Without Him, we are living a God-sized hole of a kind of life. And that hole, we try to fill it with a whole lot of things. For many of us, we try to fill it with food. And Lord knows food can fill that spot really well for like 5 minutes. But the euphoria of an incredible meal or dessert disappears fast. It's temporary, it's empty, and it's unsatisfying. And sometimes it's not just the food itself. Sometimes we're looking for relief. Sometimes we're looking for comfort. Sometimes we're looking for control. And we use food to experience those different things. But at the end of the day, it's about consuming and being filled by God. I love how David describes his hunger for God in Psalm 84:2. He says, "My soul longs, indeed it faints for the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh sing for joy to the living God." This verse is goals. I want my heart and my body to feel that way at the thought of God. And David's kind of describing this as his whole being, his flesh participates in this expression and desire for God. And we are first and foremost created to be filled by God. And it's from there that we can move into the next core element of Christian health. So first element, relationship with God. The second one is being a part of the body of Christ. So we are made for God and we have been made for community. See, God made each of us as a unique reflection of Him. One of the cool distinctions between God and pagan gods, and as we see contrasted in the Old Testament, the pagan gods were statues, and there are some really funny stories about actually how God mocks them and how God's leaders mock these fake, lifeless things. And this was how these other cultures would worship their quote unquote gods, was by creating these images of them. God forbids an image to be made of Him. He is uncontainable in a single image, but He has given us a glimpse of Himself in each of us because we are all created in His image. And it's so cool that we can experience more of God by experiencing more people and their heart and how that reflects a piece of His heart. So whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, we all need community. There was actually an interesting study done in Rosetta, Pennsylvania. Now, they did this study because the people in this city had 50% less cases of heart disease than the surrounding areas. It was literally just the people of this particular community. And they started, to test things out. They're super curious. Obviously, if they find a place that's experiencing less heart disease, then they're going to want to find out why so they can support other people. So they're looking at their diet, and it turns out that they were first generation from Italy. And I mean, we all know Italian food's super tasty, but they weren't eating necessarily anything that was overtly healthy or different. It was still like fried meatballs and pasta and things like that. So okay, it's not diet. Then, they're looking and they determined that it wasn't genetic either. After extensive research of following these people around in Rosetta, Pennsylvania, the team concluded that the people didn't have half the heart rate of disease because these people were never lonely. They lived in multi-generational homes. The grandparents lived with their kids who lived with their grandkids. They all went to the same church. They participated in a very communal culture. It was each person, each life, each household was very interconnected with the rest of their community. And the study, for that study and then other studies have shown that loneliness actually causes a stress response that is actually very taxing to the heart. And self-healing mechanisms only function when the nervous system is in a parasympathetic state, meaning in a restful state. And they ended up calling this phenomena of lowered heart disease and ultimately experiencing a greater sense of rest and peace in life, the Rossetto effect. And the people, they were feeding themselves love and purpose and community. And the unfortunate thing is, eventually their community began to disband because the younger kids started to marry outside of the community. They started to intermingle with other communities. And it was so sad because then their rates of heart disease actually began to reflect the same way as the surrounding communities. And at the end of the day, the whole point of it, the takeaway was that interconnected, multi-generational, very communal style culture was life-giving. It was healing. It was physically beneficial. And that's God's design. Now, there are definitely signs that you are part of a life-giving and healing community. And they are the kind of relationships you're in should feel healing. So you should feel recharged after being in these spaces instead of drained and depleted and resentful. You should feel unconditionally loved and not judged or scrutinized. You should feel that you can be yourself without having to filter what you say or how you behave. And you would not be in life-giving community if you were being manipulated or taken advantage of. If you are obviously abused in any way, that's not life-giving community. And what we actually need is true godly community. So if you aren't connected to God, that's right, the first element of holistic biblical Christian health, and you aren't plugged into life-giving community, which is the second element, you're really not set up for a healthy life. True godly community leaves us feeling closer to God and more fulfilled, which actually fulfillment brings us to our third core element, and that is having a sense of fulfillment and purpose in life. So the American Journal of Health Promotion did a study in 2021 on the impact of having a sense of purpose in life. They found that people with the highest sense of purpose had better health outcomes. They had better health behaviors, psychosocial outcomes, they had reduced risk of depression, and it lowered loneliness, which we just learned had a massive impact on our health and well-being. So this study had participants answer a Likert scale question, like on a scale from 1 to 5, respond to this question, this statement. I have a sense of direction and purpose in my life. 1 being absolutely not, 5 being yes, for sure, that's how I feel. So they had a series of questions like that helped them kind of determine whether or not people had a sense of purpose. Now, this study measured a sense of purpose and not the kinds of things people found purpose in. So that's kind of a differentiator there. But as believers, we know that we have inherent value and purpose because we are followers of Jesus. Understanding who God is and who we are as his children has a major impact on the sense of purpose that we have. And this is the ultimate purpose. I think there can be a lot of anxiety around figuring out what your purpose is or what you're called to do, but we all have that foundational purpose and value of being a child of God and bringing forth his kingdom and telling other people about the good news. We can rest in being God's beloved. We are aligned with God's heart when we choose to operate in ways that are loving, servant-hearted, and focused on spreading the good news of Jesus. And how that plays out comes from a place of intimacy with God. We don't have to stress about figuring that out. That's why the first core element is our relationship with God. We get to delve deeper into relationship with him. We get to digest his word and become increasingly tuned into his guidance and direction. Psalm 16:2 says, I say to the Lord, you are my Lord. Apart from you, I have no good thing. I mean, there's a couple different ways you can read that, right? One's like, apart from you, nothing's good. Or you could look at it as no good thing I have exists apart from you. Like goodness can only come from the fact that there is a good God that bestows good things. And a lot of theologians kind of land on that idea of it. Psalm 16:11 says, you will show me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. These are some really strong statements. And at the end of the day, purpose and fulfillment come from being who God has made us to be, by being led by him, by being in his presence. And our purpose and what fulfills us changes in our different life seasons. I think that's also important to know. But of course, we have the overarching purpose of bringing forth God's kingdom faithfully. So, different purposes in different seasons can look like, having the purpose and fulfillment of raising young kids or serving at your church in a particular capacity. Maybe that's leading a small group. That purpose might be working a certain vocation, that maybe it's a temporary vocation for you. Maybe it's working at a certain job. God really is faithful to direct our paths. And when we are in step with him, we walk in purpose and fulfillment. In order to experience sustainability and longevity in doing something meaningful, we must ground ourselves in God, be immersed in life-giving community, and find fulfillment and purpose from who we are in Christ. A big part of being able to do what God has called us to do is having the physical capacity to do so. As much as eating healthy is important, which I'm a huge proponent of, this, but movement is important as well. And so this brings us to our final core element of holistic, biblical, healthy living. So we are in an interesting day and age where our physical capacity is not brought on by the normal events of life the way it used to be. In biblical times, we know people used to have to walk around a lot more. You'd have to travel just to go get water. Some areas of the world, that's still the case. But even this was the case for most of human history. People had their own farms. You just lived off of your own land. You had to work the land. Anywhere you wanted to go, you had to travel by foot. It was really like the wealthy minority that would use alternatives to walking. But after the Industrial Revolution, things changed. Transportation changed. Jobs and work changed. People didn't have to work their own land anymore. It wasn't required to do physical labor on a day-to-day basis just to live and survive. Now we work desk jobs and we stand with our necks arched, staring down at a screen. And even if we do make it to the gym, that 30 to 60 minutes that we spend pales in comparison to the other 23 hours in the day where we spend most of the time sitting. Now, I tell you this not to feel crummy about that. Honestly, if anything else, we have solutions. You can set an alarm on your phone every 1 to 2 hours to just stand up and take a walk around your building. But at the end of the day, it's part of God's design that we'd be able to move well. It's a matter of having the capacity to live the life that God has for you. It's about stewarding what God's given us. And he's given you a body, a purpose, and unlimited grace to make choices and form habits that bring you into the healthy life he designed for you. Similar to there being different seasons for how you have purpose, there are even different seasons for physical exercise. So for me, I had my sports season in high school and college. It was a lot of sports, a lot of practice, a lot of games, tournaments. Then once I got married, I went into my CrossFit era, which was super fun. I want to come back to that era. But then I kind of toggled between doing boot camps or doing weights at the gym. And now I'm in my carry a 40-pound 2-year-old while taking mom walks and using playground equipment for pull-ups era. I think it really comes down to just being faithful in our physical abilities and really partnering with God and his grace to have the capacity to be and do what God has called us to do. We want to be led by him in all of that. It's unique to each individual. It's about his direction. So when it comes to these 4 core elements, we see that they're all in place, like a sturdy 4-legged chair that we can then be able to sit and be supported in when making changes in our eating habits. Because again, our eating is going to be thwarted when these other things are not in place. I'm telling you, they make all the difference. And so as you continue in your health journey, friend, I encourage you to check these 4 elements and ask yourself these questions. How is my relationship with God? How am I being immersed in life-giving Christian community? Do I feel a sense of peace and purpose in my day-to-day living? Am I stewarding the physical abilities that God has given me? And I think these are honestly really good questions for me as much as for anybody else. And I pray that God leads you in all of this, that you find yourself closer to Him, that you find yourself in a greater sense of breakthrough, and that ultimately you find yourself on a greater path of sustainable, healthy living. I'll talk to you next time, friend. Thank you so much for listening to the Vision Driven Health Podcast today. I hope this episode inspired you, supported you, and blessed you in some way. If it did, it would mean the world if you would leave a 5-star written review on Apple Podcast and share this episode on your social media. The more reviews and shares this gets, the more people can be blessed and encouraged in creating a Jesus-centered, sustainable, healthy lifestyle. If you want to hang with me and other Jesus-loving ladies who are creating healthy habits that last, be sure to join my free Facebook group, the Made Well Mastermind. Use the link in the show notes to join. Be blessed with hope, joy, and health. I'll see you next week.